I've made it a personal goal to deliberately try at least one new chord in every composition I write. Let me show you a chord I recently discovered while writing my song Star Circuit 7. It's an E flat 7 over A flat chord. This chord is placed in the progression right here, and it resolves to an A flat major chord. Let's listen to this chord in context. This chord here is my favorite in the progression because of the color that it creates. I did call it an E flat 7 over A flat, but there's other names for this shape as well. How did I come up with this sound in the first place? In this video, I'll explain how writing chords over a pedal note is a great, systematic way to expand harmonic vocabulary. A pedal occurs when the bass note of a chord progression stays the same throughout. Other colors, then, can shift on top of this foundation. That's what's going on here. Every single chord has an A flat as its root note. You can tell with this left hand here that the whole chord progression rests on that A flat foundation. This is an example of a pedal. Before we continue, I want to make sure that everybody understands slash notation. There are two types of slash chords, horizontal and vertical. Horizontal slash chords means that we have our chord over a single bass note. A vertical slash chord suggests that we have a polychord, one chord over another. Over here, we have our horizontal slash chord. It's this D over C chord. This would be played like this. However, with this vertical slash chord, although it looks the same, it means something entirely different. This is our polychord. So we have our C major triad on the bottom, and then we have our D major triad on top, two chords placed one on top of the other. This one would sound like this. So once again, we have our chord with a bass note on the left, that horizontal slash chord. And then we have our polychord, the two chords placed on top of each other on the right. When creating these pedals, you're going to see a lot of this type of slash notation in which we have one chord over one bass note. Let's take another look at that chord progression from Star Circuit 7, this one over here. So to me, a pedal gives a chord progression a sturdy sensation. Even when we reach towards unusual chords a far distance from home, the constant note underneath it all gives it a sense of inevitability. With every new chord, the relationship of the upper structure recontextualizes how that pedal note sounds. To avoid getting bored with the never-changing pedal, it is essential to create creative shapes and try consonant and dissonant sounds. If the pedal note is a unique note, then the chord will gain one more color than usual. If the pedal note is not a unique note, then it is an opportunity to explore inversions. Both ways have benefits. A great place to start exploring is through the use of triads on top of a pedal. For example, I can take this E flat triad by itself. It sounds like this. It has three unique notes. If I place an A flat pedal underneath, however, we immediately gain a new color for a total of four unique notes. This particular chord I first heard in a song called Phase Dance by Pat Metheny. Pat Metheny's version has a slightly different sonority to it. It's a minor rather than major, but really it's almost identical in the sound and the feeling that it achieves. If A flat is our root, we have our fifth, our major 7, and our 9. Really, this is just a fancy way of getting an A flat major 9 sonority, except we don't have our third. Without the third, it's more open, it's more modern, it's more of a unique voicing than your standard A flat major 9 sound. We could name this chord something else. If I was going to try to go away from this slash notation, I could name it something like A flat major 9 omit 3. That could be an accurate way to describe this sound. Let's continue on to our next example. This is the chord from Star Circuit 7. I have this E flat 7 voicing, and I pop an A flat underneath it. Now with this A flat pedal, we have 5 unique notes. If we were going to avoid this slash notation and instead name it something with A flat as a root note, it would be something like A flat major 9 sus 4. This is a cool chord because usually we have the sus4 sonority with dominant chords. So a dominant version of this chord might sound something like this. However, instead of having a dominant sound with this G flat, we have a major sound. A slightly different color than you might be expecting with this sus4 sound. We're going to build upon this chord structure by adding another note. That brings us to our next sound, which is over here. Here we have a diminished sound, E diminished, but we're adding the natural 13 or the 6, the C natural. This gives us a 5-note chord. We lift all of these colors up by 1 degree with this A flat pedal, creating a 6-note chord now. This is a really complex, gritty sound. It just has a lot of stuff going on with it. But when I show you the chord in context, it'll make a little bit more sense. Like the previous iteration, this chord over here, we have a cool combination of the sus4 and the major 7. This E natural at the bottom adds another color, the flat 13. The flat 13 usually is reserved for dominant chord tensions. By putting this unique bass note underneath, we can discover more colorful and complex sounds that we might otherwise have not come up with. Finally, let's take a look at a chord which is breaking our unique pedal rule. Here we have a D flat minor major 7 chord. When we add the A flat at the bass, it's not a unique color because we already have an A flat right here. So we're not increasing our amount of colors. However, we are creating an inversion. This D flat minor major 7 sound is in second inversion, with its 5th in the bass. After studying the music of jazz musicians like Pat Metheny and Fred Hirsch, I learned that chord inversions can be used to create more refined bass movement. In this example, we can use this chord inversion to maintain an A flat pedal. Also, even though the A flat isn't a unique note on the pedal, the use of an inversion will create a slightly different color. This is our D flat minor major 7 sound in root position. But if we play it with an A flat, it has a slightly different sound. Here we have a progression that uses all of the sounds that we've discussed earlier. Something I want you to notice while I'm playing it is how we use consonant and dissonant sounds. We have this really complex 6-note chord here woven in throughout, and if it was all just chords like that, it would be kind of difficult for the ear to listen to it. However, I always resolve these chords to more simple and more consonant sounds. That way, even though we have an A flat through the whole thing, we can still have different amounts of intrigue, different amounts of consonants and dissonance, push and pull, and it creates a chord progression which is exciting and fresh, even though we have something that is so stable and repetitive. So we've talked about how using a pedal will help you create more sophisticated chords and increase your harmonic vocabulary. But you might still be wondering, what's a way that I can discover some of these sounds? Most of it is just trial and error, but there is a systematic way that we can approach this. Let's take a look at the triad, for example, a C major triad. Now, I can place the C major triad over every single chromatic possibility, and here we can explore some of these pedal notes. I'm going to take the C major triad, I'm going to place it over every single chromatic note so you can hear the colors. On the left side, when I play the chord for the first time, you're going to see this slash notation, which will tell us what's really going on with the chord and the pedal. However, when I play it again, I want you to take a look at the right side of the screen. Sometimes it's going to be a chord symbol, like over here, but other times it's just going to be a list of all the sounds that we get if we were considering this chord with the pedal note as the root of the chord. So for example, here we can read that on top of a B, we have our flat 9, which is our C, we have our 11, which is our E, and we have our flat 13, which is the G. This chord symbol or list on the right is really going to show you all the crazy combinations that you can get when you're experimenting with different shapes over bass notes. Of course, the triad, the C major triad, is a very, very simple shape that you can start with. However, you could put whatever chord you want on top of that. For example, we could have this type of chord, the triad. We could do a 7 chord if you want to, something like this. We could do some other weird shapes like an F7 in inversion. Really, the sky is the limit. So let's play some of these triads and listen to the different sounds that we get while we go through this progression. If you end up finding a cool chord while working with pedals, put them in the comments below so I can learn about it too. If you learned something new, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch another video about harmony, you can check out my harmonic lessons on this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.